Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we are stripping away the glossy postcards and the travel brochures to look at a place that sits on the bucket list of millions.
It's a heavy topic. And honestly, it's a deceptive one.
Deceptive? How so?
Well, on the surface, it's a tourist attraction. It's the most visited site in Hawaii. But once you peel back that layer, you realize it's a massive logistical gauntlet wrapped around a very solemn, active cemetery.
Place of incredible contradiction.
Exactly.
That's a tension we really need to explore. Because looking at our sources, which range from some very detailed internal memos to guides from Halia private tours and some deep historical breakdowns, there's this huge disconnect between what people expect their visit to be
In the reality.
and the chaotic reality of actually getting through the gate.
Absolutely. The dream is paying your respects at the USS Arizona, having this quiet, reflective moment. The reality is often standing in the blistering sun, realizing your tickets were for yesterday, holding your purse because you didn't know about the strict bag policy.
And just wondering why you're so stressed out,
Right.
which is exactly why we're doing this. Our mission today is to build the ultimate insider's guide. We want to move past the Wikipedia summary of what happened in 1941 and figure out how to navigate the modern experience.
It's about moving from just seeing the site to actually experiencing it,
Yeah.
and doing it without all the stress that just ruins the memory.
So let's start at the absolute center of gravity. If you look at the map of Pearl Harbor, everything seems to orbit around one specific point.
The USS Arizona Memorial. Without a doubt. If the harbor is the body, the Arizona is the heartbeat. Historically, this is ground zero for U.S. involvement in World War II.
And the numbers here they're staggering. I think because it happened so long ago, we lose touch with the sheer scale of the loss.
We do. We see that white structure in photos that looks so peaceful, suspended over the water. But we forget that directly below it, 11,177 men died in a matter of minutes.
There was one detail in the historical breakdown that just stopped me cold. The story about the ship's band.
That's one of the most heartbreaking sub-stories of the entire attack. The entire ship's band was lost. They had been up on deck preparing to play the Morning Colors, the national anthem, when the bombs started falling.
It just grounds the tragedy, doesn't it? You're not just talking about a ship sinking.
Yeah.
You're talking about a concert that was silenced instantly. It makes it so personal.
Exactly. And that really sets the tone for the visit. When you take the Navy shuttle boat out to the memorial, you are leaving the noise of the visitor center behind. You step onto that structure, and you are literally standing over the wreckage.
And more than 1,100 sailors are still entombed inside.
It's a grave. It demands a level of silence and respect that is just. It's incredibly powerful.
Which brings us to the first major hurdle. Because this is a grave and a national memorial, access is tightly controlled. And this is where most travelers, they crash and burn. Let's talk about the ticket hack.
This is the single most common point of failure. People assume, oh, it's a national park, I'll just show up and buy a ticket.
You can't do that.
You cannot do that.
So what's the protocol? The sources mention a very specific 8-week rule.
Right. So the National Park Service releases the primary batch of tickets on recreation.gov exactly 8 weeks in advance. So if you're planning a trip for, say, mid-April, you need to be on that calendar in mid-February. You have to be proactive.
But let's say I'm a typical traveler. I booked my flight last minute, or I just forgot. I'm arriving in Honolulu in 2 days. Am I completely out of luck? Is the trip ruined?
Not necessarily, but you have to be fast. This is the insider trick that the guys from Halia really emphasize. There's a secondary batch of tickets that opens up daily for the next day.
Okay, walk me through the timing. When do I need to be on my phone?
They release these next day tickets at 3:00 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time.
3 p.m. So casual logic says I'll check the site around 3:05 while I'm grabbing a coffee.
And that casual logic will leave you without a ticket. At 3:05, they are gone. The recommendation, and I'd call this mandatory, is to set an alarm on your phone for 2:45 p.m.
2:40.
Yes, you need 15 minutes to log into your account, check your credit card details, and just keep refreshing the page. You want to be clicking reserve the absolute second the clock rolls over to 3:00. It's a digital race.
It is wild that visiting a historical site requires the same reflex speed as buying concert tickets for a major pop star.
It really is. And there's one more variable that even the best planning can't control.
The weather.
The wind,
Yeah.
specifically. The memorial is in the middle of the harbor. You have to take a Navy shuttle boat to get there. If the wind picks up, which it often does in the afternoons, the Navy will suspend operations immediately.
So you could have the golden ticket, beat the rush at 3:00 p.m. and still get turned away at the dock.
It happens more often than you would think. That's why the guides suggest aiming for earlier slots if you can snag them. Less wind, calmer water, better chance of actually getting out there.
Okay, so that covers the heartbeat, the Arizona. But the sources lay out a framework for the rest of the site that I found really helpful. Because looking at the map, it's a sprawl. There are battleships, submarines, hangars. How do we make sense of it all?
The experts use a little mnemonic device. They call it the ABAB rule. It's a really clever way to structure the narrative arc of your visit so you don't just get overwhelmed.
ABAB. Let's break that down.
So the first A is Arizona. We just discussed that one. That represents the loss, or the beginning. It's the emotional starting point.
Right. Then we move to the first B.
B is for battleship, specifically the USS Missouri, or the Mighty Mo.
And the contrast here seems really intentional.
It's striking. You go from the sunken wreckage of the Arizona, the defeat, to the towering deck of the Missouri, which represents the victory. This is the ship where World War II officially ended.
The surrender deck.
Exactly. You can stand on the exact spot where the documents were signed. But beyond the history, the sheer scale of the Missouri helps you understand the industrial might that the U.S. mobilized. This ship served all the way from WWII through the Gulf War. It's a beast.
I saw a note about something called the kamikaze deck on the Missouri. What's that?
It's a really sobering spot.
Mm-hmm.
You could see a physical dent in the side of the ship where a kamikaze plane actually impacted. It brings the violence of the Pacific War very, very close. You're standing right where it happened.
It's interesting you mentioned scale. The Arizona feels intimate, almost quiet. The Missouri.
It's massive and loud. And it's a bit of a celebrity, too. Movie buffs love it because it's been in Battleship, parts of the Pearl Harbor movie. It's the Hollywood star of the fleet.
So we have A for Arizona, the loss. B for Battleship, the victory. Now we go back to
Aviation. The Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum. This shifts your perspective from the sea to the sky.
And this is located on Ford Island, right? Inside the old hangars.
Yes. Hangar 37 and Hangar 79. And this isn't just a museum built near the site. It is in the site. The sources point out that if you look at the glass windows of the hangar doors, the bullet holes from the December 7th attack are still there.
They didn't repair them.
They left them intentionally. It grounds the history in the physical space. You're looking at these beautifully restored planes, but you're standing in a crime scene. It connects the dots.
I imagine this is the part of the tour that really appeals to the tech crowd.
Definitely. They have 360-degree flight simulators and a lot of focus on engineering. If you have kids or students interested in STEM, this is usually their favorite stop. It's very interactive.
And finally, we close the loop with the last B.
The Bowfin, the USS Bowfin Submarine.
I saw it has a nickname. The Pearl Harbor Avenger.
That's the one. It was launched exactly 1 year after the attack, so the symbolism is heavy, but the experience here is completely different from the battleship.
I'm assuming different means smaller.
Much, much smaller. This is where you understand the grit of the war. You literally climb down through the hatches and walk through the torpedo rooms and the bunks.
It's sort of a visceral check on the romance of naval warfare, isn't it?
Completely. You feel the claustrophobia. You can smell the machine oil. It's known as the silent service. And you really understand why when you see how 80 men lived in that steel tube for months at a time.
So that's the ABAB flow. Arizona for the start, Missouri for the end, aviation for the sky, Bowfin for the underwater grit. It turns a chaotic map into a clear story.
And it balances the emotions. You aren't just sitting in sadness the entire day. You're seeing the response, the technology, and the final resolution. It makes for a complete journey.
Now, I want to pivot here. Because usually when we talk about Pearl Harbor, the timeline starts in 1941. Maybe 1940 if we're being thorough. But the sources we have go way, way back. And this cultural context completely changed how I picture the geography.
This is the hidden layer that most tourists miss completely. Long before this was a naval base, this harbor was a vital resource hub.
The name itself, Pearl Harbor, it's not just a metaphor, is it?
No, it's literal. The English name comes from the pearl-bearing oysters that used to be abundant in these waters. It was a rich ecosystem known as Waimomi in Hawaiian, meaning waters of pearl.
But the internal memos and the cultural guides highlight something interesting. It wasn't exactly a peaceful paradise.
We tend to project this sort of Eden image onto pre-contact Hawaii, but this specific area has a deep history of conflict. The sources discuss these intense disputes over fishing rights.
So people were fighting over this water centuries before the battleships ever arrived.
Exactly. It was a place of struggle. The geography itself protected waters, rich resources, made it a prize. The geography dictates the conflict.
And there's a spiritual dimension mentioned in notes as well, something about guardians.
Yes, and we have to be respectful here as we are discussing local beliefs. The sources mention legends of shark riders and shark guardians who watched over these waters.
It adds a very different weight to the place. You have the modern ghosts of the sailors, but they are sharing the space with these ancient legends.
It reminds you that you are a guest, not just on a military base, but in a place that has held spiritual significance for a very long time.
I think that context is crucial. It stops it from just being a war movie set and makes it a real place.
Precisely.
Now, speaking of those with a personal connection, we have a note here for our listeners who are active military or veterans. There are some doors that open for them that don't for the general public.
This is a really nice aspect of how the site is managed. If you have military credentials, you aren't stuck with just the standard tour. The sources highlight the Remembrance Barge Tour.
How is that different from the standard ferry?
It's described as incredibly intimate. It takes you around the harbor with a focus on respect and detail that you just can't get on the big public boat. It's a service-to-service connection.
And there are other memorials, right? The Arizona isn't the only ship that was lost.
Correct. You have the USS Utah and the USS Nevada Memorials on Ford Island. The Utah in particular is often overlooked by the public because it's harder to get to.
But if you have an active military ID,
You could drive your own car right onto Ford Island and visit them. It's quiet, there are no crowds, and many veterans find it to be the most moving part of the visit. It's just you and the history. No tourists taking selfies, just the memorial.
that is a huge perk, especially considering the nightmare of getting around otherwise. Which brings us to the part of the show where we save our listeners a headache. Let's do the logistics lightning round.
Let's do it, because you can know all the history, but if you mess this part up, you're not getting in.
First item, bags. This seems to be the one that catches everyone off guard.
The no-bag policy. And they mean it. No purses, no backpacks, no camera bags, no fanny packs.
Wait, not even a fanny pack.
Nothing that can conceal an object. It's a strict security measure.
So what happens if I show up with my backpack?
You enter the line of regret. You have to stand in a long queue to pay for a storage locker. It costs money, but more importantly, it burns valuable time. The hack is leave it in the car, or better yet, the hotel. Phone, wallet, keys in your pocket. That's it.
Item 2, traffic.
Brutal. Honolulu traffic is legendary. The sources are unanimous. Arrive at least 1 hour early.
1 hour before your ticket time.
At minimum. If you have a 9 a.m. ticket and you roll into the parking lot at 8:50, you are going to miss your boat. Finding parking alone can take 20 minutes.
And the location itself.
It's deceptive. It looks close to the airport, only about 5 minutes away. But if you're coming from Waikiki, where most people stay, it's a 30-minute drive without traffic. With traffic, it can easily be an hour.
So we have a strict bag policy, terrible traffic, and a ticket system that requires sniper-like reflexes. This sounds stressful.
It is, which is why we need to look at the different ways to actually tour the site. You basically have 3 choices.
We've got solo, big bus, and private.
Right. On your own gives you flexibility, you save money. But you're the project manager. You're driving, parking, stressing over the time.
Then the big bus tours.
Efficient, but rigid. You're part of the herd. You get on the bus, you get off the bus.
Yeah.
If you want to spend an extra 20 minutes at the Aviation Museum because your kid loves the planes, too bad. The bus is leaving.
And this is where the Halia private tours source really makes its case. What's the advantage?
It's the stress removal. The real value is the narrative. You have a guide who knows the stories, the band, the shark guardians. It connects all the dots for you.
Plus customization.
Exactly. If you want to skip the submarine and spend more time on the battleship, you can.
Yeah.
It's your day, not the bus driver's schedule.
What about the people who insist on driving themselves but still want that context?
There's a middle ground. The sources mention a GPS-triggered audio tour option, so your phone essentially becomes the tour guide as you drive. It triggers stories based on your location.
That's smart. Now, before we wrap up, there's one final hack that I found fascinating because it's not just about saving time. It's about saving money and doing something good. Voluntourism.
This is a massive trend in travel right now. The company promotes these positive impact activities.
How does it work?
The deal is simple. You participate in a community service, activity planting native trees, beach cleanups, removing invasive species, and in exchange, you get a significant discount on your tour.
And the numbers in the notes are pretty substantial.
We're looking at group savings between $100 and $300. That's real money.
So you spend a morning helping restore a reef, and you basically pay for your dinner that night with the savings.
Yes, but more than the money, it connects you to the land. We talk about how this place has this deep history. By putting your hands in the dirt, you're participating in that history, not just observing it.
You're leaving the island better than you found it.
Exactly. It transforms you from a tourist into a participant.
Oh. So bringing this all back together, Pearl Harbor isn't just a checkbox on a generic itinerary. It's not just a selfie spot.
No, it's a complex site. It's a cemetery, a battlefield, a museum, and a place of ancient significance.
And to navigate it, you need a strategy. You need the 8-week or 24-hour ticket plan. You need the ABAB rule to manage your energy. And you need to decide if you're a DIY project manager or if you want a guide to handle the load.
Planning is the difference between a day of frustration and a meaningful memory. The Arizona demands silence, the Missouri demands awe. But you can't feel either of those things if you're worried about where you park the car.
Well said. And as you leave the harbor, I think there is a question from the sources that really lingers. It's something that stuck with me.
What's that?
We focus so much on the conflict of 1941, it dominates the narrative, but we learned today that this specific geography, this exact shape of land and water, was a site of struggle for centuries before the first plane flew over. That is something to mull over as you look out at the water. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Safe travels.
We'll catch you on the next one.